Good morning. My name's John with the Pine Tree, and I have a great pleasure being here with Debbie Ponte.
Hi, John.
Thanks for letting me stop by your place here. Now we're at Foothill Village. Now, an interesting thing, you're kind of the curator of the living history of the area, right?
Mm-hmm. You might say that. I'm preserving it.
This is a great facility. Now, how many residents will you have here at any one time?
I average about 74 residents at
Wow.
any given time. We have the capacity for about 85 if all my 2 bedrooms were rented, but as the senior population is, most times it's a single person.
Right. Very neat. Now, this is a little bit of a who, what, when, where, why. So if somebody's getting ready to mark, the absentee ballots will go out in a few days and stuff like that. What do you think? Why should they vote for you?
Well, I think I'm representing a leader for a change.
Okay.
Part of my reasoning for running is talking to a lot of people and having been here in the community for quite some time and running a small business and being involved in a variety of civic and community service organizations. What I was feeling a lot of is people just wanting a change. And nothing to say about what's happened in the past has been that bad.
Right.
But just a change. Our communities are changing. They're growing by leaps and bounds, especially in the Copperopolis area. People want someone that will listen to them, that will carry their voice forward, and that's what I think I represent. I have no preconceived notion or agenda to do this or build that or anything along those lines. So I think I come in with a very neutral voice for people to be able to talk to me about it and let me carry their message forward.
Now, for people who are just becoming familiar with your name, again, from the signs that you've served. Now, you were Angels Campus mayor previously, correct?
I was. I've been off council for a little over 6 years, 7 years, and I served on the city council for 2 terms, which was 8 years altogether. Of the 8 years, 2 of them I served as vice mayor and 4 years as mayor.
Okay.
And within the city council, you're chosen among yourselves to serve in that leadership capacity.
Right.
In addition to being on the city council, as with the board of supervisors, you have all these other fingers that go out to other boards and commissions
and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough that I was also a member of the Utica Power Authority.
Got it.
And with that, then I think within 6 months I became chairperson, and within that time period, I was also chairperson when we dealt with the Darby fire and the loss of our water system. So that was a very, very busy time for us. But then in addition to LAFCO and, there are 6 or 7 various other committees and commissions that, all city council, we all divided up among ourselves and served, much like the board of supervisors.
So you will have a familiarity with a lot of the extended duties of what, into the supervisory role.
Yeah.
Now, I guess this goes back to, is kind of the question that's been kind of a lot of people's mind on just purely economic development. I think, how I see this is where with the economic downturn the last few years, we've, in essence, what's traditionally been the middle class here has been hollowed out, because if you have the, selling real estate, construction jobs, the traditionally the core of what has been the middle class. That's not saying it won't come back, and it's not coming back, but I don't think that sector of our economy will ever come back to where it was previously. I mean, because there's political pressures for not having that sector do as well anyway. Yeah. What would you, maybe this is kind of an outside of the scope, but what would some of your goals be? As far as economic stuff and how government could facilitate, building more of a robust middle class, because the high end is doing well, the low end will always be with us, but it's that middle ground, families and things like that have had a tough run the last few years.
I think we're in a period of our lives where we have to retool ourselves.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while for the economy to come back to the way it was, if it ever comes back to that fashion. But, as I look around in the different communities and, when I look at really throughout Calaveras County, there is no one strong EDC force, economic development force. Everybody's kind of doing this and that and everything else. And so what I see perhaps from a county level is really, becoming a leader in that EDC role. And working with the various communities, because government shouldn't be the one to say, you do this and you do that, and this is how you're going to do it. but be able to maybe provide a template, provide some additional resources that aren't in the county. We have to go beyond our county into the region to see what we have to offer. You know, when I look at EDC, there's kind of two factions. There's a one with when we want to bring new business to our community and looking at our infrastructure, where's the proper place to place this kind of industry, whatever that might be, whether it's retail, light industry, look at our ag tourism, you know, look at what are some of our natural resources we have here and what we can do to foster that development. And then I look at the small business that's here, you know, in some way everybody is struggling. And so, you know, what are we struggling with? What is, you know, what I find a lot of it is people will just buy local. You know, so much of our business goes outside the community. And granted, there are some services that we don't provide here, but there are many that we do. And so that emphasis of buying local, looking at our homegrown products and seeing how we can incorporate that into our businesses, support many of the fine business associations we have throughout the community, but being able to help people grow and expand their businesses that we currently have. So, you know, I just hopefully to pull together a strong EDC kind of centralized force to be able to help all of our different communities and provide some leadership and structure.
You know, one of the things that I think has been somewhat of a criticism of county government over the last few years is from an economic perspective is the message hasn't been consistent. You know, people will get started, you know, they'll get a project in a way, then the message will change mid-course or, I mean, and I think that's,
didn't we tell you that?
and I think that would be the one thing is where if the county can have a consistently positive message within reason towards business, but also is, you know, I think that the one thing that's frustrated some people is that, if, for example, I think if we grant a person a building permit or something like that, that should be also the expectation that they can get the completed one and also get it on the market. You know, I mean, you know, the rules shouldn't change midstream.
It's a complicated, convoluted, frustrating process. You know, I was a part of that. I've been with Foothill Village since the groundbreaking, and the owners, you know, working with the owners, they certainly were the ones who were, you know, doing a lot of the harder work. But, you know, what I saw was just you go in and you get this answer, you get this piece of paper saying this is what you need to do, and then you come back, you know, a day later saying, okay, I got this done, and say, oh, by the way, you need to do this, this, and this. So, you know, what I look at it from a county level is that there has to be some way where someone comes in and says, I want to do this kind of business. And being able to meet with someone that says, okay, this is kind of the process you have to go through. You know, some people call it one-stop shopping. I'm not sure if that's a realistic approach. But being able to sit down with somebody and saying, okay, you know, the business plan that you're going to need, this is the permitting process you're going to have to go through. I have found through SBC, they've been a valuable resource. I'm not sure if enough people even realize what SBC is and the resources available. But it's something along those lines to where someone can come down and say, that I have this dream, I have this vision. I want to open a clothing store. You know, not the big box retail, but just a simple clothing store. You know, where do I go with that? You know, I think I want that place over there, but I don't know what I have to do for permit or what it's going to cost me to do that. So being able to sit down and say, this is kind of everything you have to go through. And that's where I think an EDC role would be very helpful because they're in tune to what it takes.
To help us kind of a liaison.
Yeah, someone in the building department, they're very familiar with the building code and this is what you have to do, but they don't know about anything else. In an EDC role, you kind of know a little bit of everything, so that would help somebody guide through the process a little easier.
Now, along that line, let's say you get elected. What would some of your goals be? I mean, what would you like to see happen? I mean, what do you think? You know, what would you?
I really think the budget is a key component. You know, really having a good analytical review of the budget and where we are, you know, where we need to go, kind of where the money's coming from, where the money's leaving. You know, real critical analysis of the spending. You know, just where is the spending, as well as where the income is coming from and the various different sources. So you're trying to balance that. I look at, you know, from a county point of view, I mean, the budget is the driving force. And, you know, when I look back and step back into the communities, what I see in the Copperopolis areas, you know, they're just desperately, you know, wanting to get a community plan in place. And they've had many, many years of attempting that.
Right.
And, you know, it needs to get done, and there needs to be specific timelines and goals, and it needs to get done.
Yeah.
And if the goal is 4 years, okay, let's go for that goal and get it done.
Okay.
And I never see that, you know, that process completed. And then in tune the general plan. So those are some community issues I see
So
on
you
a
would,
larger scale.
and so that maybe have some of these goals that seem, on the county level, seem like almost like an endless process.
Mhm.
Maybe draw some lines in the sand and say, let's get these done by this date, let's, let's knock them
Yeah,
out type of
yeah.
thing. I think that would be, yeah.
I think people, that's what people are wanting to know. You know, there's confusion as to, oh, I thought there was a general plan in place. Or, you know, we talked about that community plan, and I thought we
Thought it
had
was
one.
done, right.
You know, well, there's kind of, 2005
Sure.
and 2009, so, at some point, the residents they give up on it. It's like, oh my gosh,
Right.
forget about it.
Right.
I thought we had it, and why get involved? No one's listening,
Mhm.
paying attention,
Mhm.
So I think that has to be a clear, definite goal. We're gonna get this done, some specific timelines to it, engage the community, and not just have a meeting and say, come to us and tell us what you think.
Right.
I think it's the outreach
Right.
back to the community. And I think that's a pretty important role for the supervisors as well as members who serve on these various committees.
Mhm.
They need to help extend that outreach and get some community input that way.
Understood. Now, as far as kind of continuing on the district, on specific district goals, is this district I see is potentially as, the economic hub of the county. I know Murphy's is no longer in the district, so this little bit of the tourism piece is out of it. But I mean, as far as generalized retail, a lot of this would be probably, some of that's
Yeah.
within the city, but you have, so with the changes in the makeup of this particular district, I think this is one of those redistricting things that I think was good in a lot of ways, because it makes kind of a logical, much more so than, it did before, but, district-specific goals. I know we talked to the Copperopolis plan, what are some other
Yeah.
ones would be?
Well, I like to see, within, Angels Campus has the, kind of a newly formed EDC,
Yes.
kind of offshoot
Yep.
of the branding.
Yep.
And many times people have seen the county and the city kind of pitting against each other. And I, definitely would feel that from time to time serving on the city council. So I like to bridge that relationship a little bit better. I think the city has some wonderful attributes to bring to the EDC table. And, look at that small business growth. Look at primarily within Angels Camp.
Mhm.
There's some land in and around that might be some light industry
Sure.
type growth.
Yeah.
I look at this business alone. A lot of people don't realize, senior living is a pretty healthy business
Oh, boy.
these days.
Oh, yeah.
The numbers of people over 65 and the number of people living, 85 plus. So I look at, that kind of business, which is, we don't cause a lot of impact on the community. We have seniors who live here. They're buying still groceries,
Yep.
medical care,
Yep.
pharmacy,
Yep.
going to the local
Mhm.
markets and things like that. So I look at that small business growth and offering services that aren't here. What can we bring into our community?
Right.
That's kind of on the EDC role for, I think, Angels Camp. Also too, taking a look at bridging those relationships, utilizing county services, Angels Camp does the dispatch with the jail, the
Mhm.
health services, things like
Mhm.
that, and making sure those kinds of services are good for all in our district. The transportation, that's probably another issue between the two communities with the wagon trail and the
Right.
O'Burns Bridge.
Right.
So,
Right.
seeing where we are in those projects and seeing, if those projects are, first of all, feasible and reasonable
Mhm.
and if it's something that we need. I know it's not going to happen in the immediate future.
Right.
It'll probably be a project like the Highway 4 bypass, taking 40 to
Took a
50
while.
years.
Yeah, it took a
So-
while.
But, I can see the need for planning in the future.
Yeah. Now, I guess, to finish up then, is why the run? We've talked
Mhm.
previously off camera and stuff about, this was the time for you to do it, but I guess, maybe this, what drove you to get into the race and why now?
What
And
drove me crazy? No. I have always, as a young person, I've always been involved in community and public service. And I really enjoyed my time on the city council. wasn't always fun, but I enjoyed what I did. I personally don't consider myself a political person. I just have a real desire to serve and to make our community a better place.
Right.
So, this was a good time for me. It was, my position here is very stable. My family is much older now, so I'm not the mom driving kids to games and, PTAs and running snack shacks and things like that. I also like the redistricting. I thought Angels and Murphys have a lot in common. Having been, raised here most all my life, I always saw Angels in Copperopolis, a lot of familiarities and a lot of common interests and such. So it was just a good time overall.
Yeah.
And for me, again, I'm a leader for a change. I really like to see some fresh ideas, some fresh faces at the Board of Supervisors level to help set a vision and bring our county forward.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us, and good luck. And one of the things we want to say is say thank you for running, because if, for those of you who look at this from the outside looking in, you think these are trivial or easy decisions to run, they're not. And because once you get into it, it's an all-in thing.
It's an all-in thing.
And it takes commitment on a lot of different levels. And I think that and thank you for running, because I know it's not an easy choice to get to, and the commitment that it takes to take it through to the end is significant. Thank you very much.